Delegation of Ukrainians has visited Longview 13 times in the past 2 decades, and another delegation was back today to meet with first responders. As KLTV7's Jamie Boehm explains, these visits are part of a program designed for foreign delegations to learn about a range of topics, including energy and infrastructure.
A delegation of Ukrainians met with Longview Fire Chief J.P. Steelman to see how the Longview Fire Department operates, according to U.S. Ukraine Foundation Vice Chairman Brad Bunt.
Some are in the Ukrainian parliament, some are mayors, and some are CEOs of oil and gas companies.
They are here in conjunction with the Open World program, which promotes an exchange with professional counterparts in foreign countries. It's similar to a foreign exchange student program, but for businessmen. They've been
bringing delegations over to Longview through Open World began in 2004.
He says visitors and topics vary with each delegation.
This specific delegation deals with oil and gas and energy and infrastructure.
Bunt says it has been some time since the last delegation visit because of the war in Ukraine.
We had to pause delegations coming, so this is really the first time in 5 years. And we feel it's special because we have a member of parliament with us today, and he's connected with Zelensky. A lot of people have heard of President Zelensky in Ukraine.
Ukrainian Parliament member Andrew Garris is also chairman of the Ukraine Energy Commission. LFD shows him the ropes of an aerial rescue, but he and the delegation are also interested in how Texas uses traditional and green energy sources.
How to build some smart mix of all this energy, so it's very interesting to see how it works here and to bring this experience to Ukraine.
As far as police and fire departments, he says in Ukraine they are under federal authority, not local. Garris will take back information about how the U.S. entities operates and maybe
make some changes to develop it, to work it better.
The delegation will be attending an oil and gas symposium later in the week to meet with their American counterparts. But so far,
so it's very interesting. I like it.
Jamie Boehm, KLTV 7 News.
The 10-day trip begins with a few days in Washington, D.C. to learn about federalism before the delegates head to another state to meet their counterparts.